In today's video, we're going to continue to add to our Quest system by creating a new QuestAdvanceTrigger node. And this node's going to allow us to drop it into scenes, connect it and integrate it with things like the triggers or the dialogue on this NPC here so that we can give quests and advance quests on our player. Hi, my name is Michael. Welcome to my 2D action and adventure RPG tutorial series. Follow along and learn how to create your own ARPG in Godot 4 using GD script. Okay, so what we've built recently is we built our quest manager, as you can see here. Oh, it's checked off. We built the quest UI. And now what I want to do is build the quest progression nodes, or really it's just a single node that's going to be pretty powerful. So we'll call this our QuestAdvanceTrigger. And we're going to work through how to build this, how it works, how to connect it to other things, and we'll also do a little bit of work that's needed to be able to connect it to our dialogue system pretty quickly and easily. And once we get to that point, we'll be ready for the next step. Stay tuned because we also fix a critical bug to the quest manager system within this video related to how we're saving the names of our quests. So make sure you catch that in there as well. All right, let's begin by just setting up some of the files that we're going to need to make this happen. So first things first, let's find the quests folder. And inside the quest folder, we previously, when we built the quest manager system, we created a folder for these utility nodes. And this is the folder where we're going to place things. And I want to create a new folder in here real quick, just for the icons that we're going to need. And go ahead and open that up. And I'm going to open this in my file manager. Okay. Then go ahead and open up the zip file where you've extracted, or the file where you've extracted the quest zip file. And we have two little icons, Quest Advance and Quest Switch. Go ahead and just grab those, put them in there. And we're going to use those for these quest related nodes. Now, in order to make these quest nodes that we're going to make, both for the node that advances a quest and for the one that acts as a switch or a trigger when we've completed quest steps, they're both going to inherit from or extend a script that we're going to call QuestNode. So let's create this new script, call it QuestNode, not Bode, QuestNode. Okay, and let's open this up. And what we're going to do is we're going to just build this script out a little bit and talk about what it will allow us to do, and then we'll apply it to the other nodes that we're going to be creating. So this should be a tool script because it's going to be used to do some things in the editor, and we want to give it a class name so that it's easy to extend from. So this will be called QuestNode. And extending node, let's make it extend to node 2D. And let's give it 3 export variables. These export variables are going to be we want a variable so that we can tie a quest to it, and we'll call this our linked quest. We also want a variable that tells this quest node which step of the quest it's related to, and then another one to track whether or not the quest complete is important to this node. And so if I spelled export right, then we could come over here and export that first one. So we'll get our linked quest, and this will be of type quest. And by default, we can set this to null. And we also want a setter function on there. So let's say set equals underscore set underscore quest. Okay, and let's go ahead and create that function so we don't have an error. So func set quest. And this set quest function needs to accept an argument, obviously, so that we can call it. We can just call it underscore v for value, and this will be of type quest. Okay. The next export variable we want that we mentioned was the quest step. And as I was saying, this is just a reference to the step that this quest node is related to or tied to. And actually, we're not going to make it a string. We're going to make it an integer. We can default it to 0. And we also want a setter function. So when we set it, we'll call set step. Okay, so let's create that function as well. Think. And once again, this will pass in or accept a value that would be an integer. And let's see, our next export variable will be called quest complete. And this is a Boolean. We'll set it to false by default. And this will also have a setter function that we will call, we'll just call it set complete. And of course, this also accepts an argument of type Boolean. So there we go. We've got our variables set up as well as some setter functions that correspond with each of those. And we'll build those out shortly. And so what we're going to be building here is, you can see this little setting summary section. This is editable, but we're actually not going to really want to edit this. This is just going to show us what this quest would do. So for example, when we change the step, then it updates the step that this is related to, okay? And likewise, if we check for this complete, it changes that we're checking for completed is true or false. We're going to build this little informational bit here in our inspector by just kind of writing some stuff in this script. So as we start building this, one thing to keep in mind, and I'm not going to do it here because it's more advanced, but we could make a plugin that would allow us to put that stuff in the inspector without having to have this export variable that we're going to create next. The only downside to this export variable is if you didn't know what you were doing, you could type in it, but it's not going to affect how this node works in any way. So it's not harmful, and it's only hacky to the degree that it has some, potential for the user to interact with it. Or by the user, I mean the developer, right? But it's not a big deal. So let's first export a category so that we can have a nice little divider for this section. And we'll just give this category a title of information only. So hopefully that'll clue you in to say, oh yeah, this is just informational. And then we'll export a multi-line variable. And this multi-line variable is where we're going to display all that text I was showing. So we'll just call this variable settings _ summary. And this can be a string. And there we go. We don't need any setter in here. Now, the reason why we put a setter on all these variables is so that as we update them, we can then update what's displayed in the setting summary. That's the whole purpose behind the setters, all right? And again, now this quest node is only primarily concerned with providing the base functionality that's going to be shared between both the nodes that are our QuestAdvanceTrigger as well as our QuestActivateSwitch type node, okay? Because they're going to share some of these options as well as this little setting summary window. They'll also share the fact that they have, it's obviously important that they have a linked quest. Both of them will require or want to know what step or status of the quest they're related to, okay? We'll just use that information in different ways for both of them. Let's go ahead and set up these setter functions now. So for this set quest, what we're going to do here is say linked quest equals _v, and then we're going to reset our quest step so that if you, let's say you have one of these and you were already on a quest and you've selected a related step, we want to reset that if you change the linked quest. So we'll set the quest step equal to 0 anytime the quest itself changes. And then we're going to update the summary. And in order to do that, we're going to need to make a function. So for right now, we'll just put a comment. We'll say update summary. Okay. And then the next one is setting our step. Now the step we want to set, we want the user to be able to only select steps that the quest actually has. So what we're going to say is quest step equals, and instead of just setting it to the value, we're going to clamp it. And so we're going to say clamp, and then we'll pass in the value into our clamp here. And then the clamp parameters are a minimum of 0. And then the maximum, we're going to have to, let's create a function to do this actually, because what we want to do for the maximum is we want to determine how many steps there are in the quest, okay? So let's just leave this here. For now, I'm just going to put a 0 in and we'll come back and change that. So for our set step, we're going to need a function that we'll call get step count, I guess. And because we're expecting a value from this, this is going to return an integer. What we're going to do here is first check if we have a linked quest, because if we don't, then we can't figure that out, right? So if linked quest equals null, then we will return 0 because there are no steps. Else we will return the linked quest dot steps dot size. Okay, so that'll give us just the size of that array, how many steps there are. So now up here in our set step, we can replace this maximum value with get step count, just like that. And of course, just like in our set quest, we need to update the summary. We'll use the same function here as we do in the set quest function. Okay, so we have one more setter function, and that's our set complete. And this one will be the simplest of all. We'll just say quest complete equals value, and then we will call our update summary function, right, that we're going to make. Okay. So there we go. We've got these here. Let's go ahead and create that update summary, and then we'll plop this on a node and just kind of test it out and see what it does. So function, we'll call it update summary. Okay. So again, going back to that example, the update summary is going to update this little section in here. All right, based on all the values that we've been setting in our other areas. So here's what update summary is going to do. It's actually, I mean, it's quite simple because really we just have one string that we need to update. It's this multi-line setting summary. Okay. And so what we can do is we can just simply start by setting it, setting summary equals, and then we just want the information. So we can kind of just treat this and type in here whatever we want. And I'm going to type in all caps, update quest, and then we can type in a / and an N, and you see how they gave it a different color. That's going to create a new line in that multi-line. Okay. And then we'll put on the next line, we'll type quest : with a space, and then we'll just add the linked quest title. So that'll be the first thing we display. All right. And then let's go ahead and add another line break here, just like that. Make sure that that / N is within the quotes. And then let's make another line where we update our setting summary. We'll just say plus equals. This is going to add on to that string, right? It's not going to replace it. It's going to add to the end of it. So the next line will say step. Here we want to show the number that we've entered from above as well as the name of that step. So how we can do that is first have a string conversion of the quest step value. Okay, so that's just going to be, you know, whatever, an integer that we convert to a string. And then let's go ahead and just add a little separator. So we'll put like space dash space, and then we can add the step. And we don't really have an easy way to get the step name in here because we're only tracking the index, right? So let's create a quick little function for this one, and we'll call it getStep. And this will return a string. So here, what we need to do is we need to check that our quest step value is within the range of actual steps, because again, we don't want to return anything that we can't. And we can also check to make sure it's not 0. So first, let's check if it's 0. We'll just say if quest step does not equal 0. That's the first thing. And then next, we'll do another check. We could put both of these together with an and, or we can do it this way. We can make another if. We'll say, in fact, let's do the and. I like the and. So if the quest step doesn't equal 0 and the quest step, here what we want to check is to make sure it's within the step count, right? And we have a value, we have a variable to get that, and this should always be true, but just to be safe, let's do this, less than or equal to get step count. This will just make sure that it's within that range. So if both of those are true, then we can return the linked quest dot steps. And then we can just plug in, because our quest steps are starting at 1, the way we're using them here is 0, meaning you don't have a step selected. That's what we're going to do. We need to, and because arrays, our index starts at 0, right? The first item being 0. What we need to do is we can't pass the quest step alone. We need to pass in the quest step minus 1. Okay, so if you've selected the first step, then it's going to find the item at index 0, right? I think that makes sense, which will be the first item in the array. And if not, let's just return a string of n/a. So like there's no quest, okay? So then up here, let's just add this getStep function, like so, in our update summary. And last thing we want to do is, let's make another new line. Now you could do this /n as part of the next line of code, but doesn't matter where you do it as long as you do it. So you get a new line. So setting summary plus equals, and here we're going to say complete, and then we want to convert to a string our Boolean value of quest complete. All right. So there we go. If we save this, and I'm looking at my scene with all these guys on here, I'm going to go ahead and just drop in any random node. Okay. So I'm just going to create a new one so that I'm not messing with anything existing. So drop in a node 2D, and let me just put this QuestNode script on it. So here we go. We've got a QuestNode script. You can see in the inspector now we've got the QuestNode linked quest step complete, and the information only. Let's go ahead and load one of our quests. And the summary is not updating. So, well, these things are here, but something's wrong. Let's check our script. I know it's wrong. We never call our update summary. So let's go ahead and copy that function name, and everywhere where we have the comment, just go ahead and plop it in there. Okay, so now when we select this node again, there we go. So when we change this, you can see I've selected the Recover Lost Flute quest resource. And so now we've got the title. The quest is Recover Lost Magical Flute. If we hit up and down on the, so if we go to, quest step 0, it's no step selected. If we go up, step 1, find the magical flute. 2, return magical flute to Nero. Right? And those are the only steps we've got here. And likewise, we can toggle on or off the quest complete. Okay. Now this right now isn't doing a whole lot because, like I said, this is a template and a base for the other nodes that we're going to create. All right. So make sure you get this node working, test it out, make sure that the functionality that I'm showing here works for you. And then you should be ready to move on to the next step. All right. So once we have this in place, what we're really going to use this for, right, like we've been talking about, is creating some quest nodes that we can use for various purposes. So let's start with the first one, which I'm going to make a new scene in here. And the first one that I'd like to make and work on is our QuestAdvanceTrigger, is what we're going to call it. Okay, so this QuestAdvanceTrigger, what it's going to do is it's going to be a node that we can use and we can place in the world. And we'll tie it to signals, signals that come from the parent node, right? So for example, in our dialog system, we could plop one of these as a child and connect it to a signal in the dialog. And whenever we get that signal, then we can trigger this quest to advance. And we also have to be careful that we only advance the quest, if we've got the right information. And we'll use our quest manager update quest function to advance it. And so it should be actually fairly straightforward to build this QuestAdvanceTrigger node. And so let's start by adding and attaching a script to it here. And this script should be a tool because we're going to extend our quest node. This also has to be a tool for that to work. And I'd also like to give this an icon because I want this to be easily distinguished in the scene tree. And so let's just open our icon folder, and there's the QuestAdvance icon that we can use here. Drop that in, and then let's give it a class name. Whoop, and we'll call this QuestAdvanceTrigger. Okay, and instead of extending node 2D, like I mentioned before, this will extend quest node. And then what this does is I'm going to go ahead and save this. Even without doing any code on this QuestAdvanceTrigger, you can see that it now has a linked quest setting, quest step, and all of that stuff, as well as a setting summary that's going to work. Okay, let's go ahead and begin by setting up and talking about the functions that we're going to have in this script. So we're going to utilize a ready function. Okay. We're going to have a function that we just call advance quest because that's the sole purpose of this node, right? That's really all it's for. That will return void. And then that's it. Those are all the functions we need in this advance quest script. Let's start with the ready function. Just do one thing in here. So I want to remember when we create tool scripts, sometimes we want to add functionality within the ready function, but we don't want it to run in the editor, but it would because it's a tool script, right? So let's just add if engine.isEditor hint, then return, because we don't want to run the script in here. Okay, and then we'll do some other work in here. But then let's work on the advanced quest function because this is the primary function. So like I said, whenever we receive a trigger, we can just call the advanced quest. And we just need to do a check to make sure we have a quest. So let's start with that. If linked quest equals null, then we'll return. We just won't run the rest of the function. Okay, so there's our little sanity safety check. And then ultimately what we want to do in here is call our quest manager and call the update quest function, right? And as we can see here, the update quest is expecting the title of the quest, the completed step, which is an optional argument, as well as another optional argument is complete, whether or not we are completing the quest as we advance it, okay? And so we need to determine that information. We can get a lot of this just from our linked quest. So when we look at these, the first variable that we want to determine is the title. And that's simple because this title, which is a string, comes from our linked quest directly. So it's the linked quest.title. Okay, so we can go ahead and pass that in here just like that. Now you could alternatively just simply put that variable or that piece of that line of code right here in place of the title. But I like how this looks doing it this way. We also need to get the step if we're going to complete a step. This is also a string, right? This is the step that will go from a not complete to a completed step. And we had that function actually that we created, getStep. Even though this function isn't in this file, since we're extending QuestNode and it does have that function, we can just call it, right? So where is it? GetStep right here. So we're just calling this. But we had to take note because this will return either the name of a step that we've selected or a string that's n/a. If we get NA, we don't want to save that. So let's go to our QuestAdvanced script, and I'm going to close a couple of these because I didn't plan ahead for that. Okay. So let's just do a quick check here. If step, right, equals n/a, oh, I didn't put quotes on that. Then we want to treat it differently. We'll just convert that to an empty string, just like that. Okay. So then we're ready to pass in the step as the second argument of this here. And then to get the quest complete, we'll just simply call our quest complete variable. We don't need to do any extra code with that one. It's good as is. Okay. So this is what our advanced quest script will do. It's quite simple, right? Because we've really done all the hard work within our quest manager. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. But let's figure out how to actually connect this, right? Because I mentioned we're going to connect to a signal, and I'm going to show you a way you could just use this as is, and then I'm going to show you my personal preferred way. So if we go to scene 2 and look at this node 2D, let me go ahead and actually just delete that. Okay. So we can come. In fact, just to make it really simple, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to add one of those pressure plates from the dungeon. Okay, because this is super simple and obvious. Let's look at the pressure plate. It has a signal called activated every time it's pressed and deactivated when it's released. So we can connect to the activated signal on the pressure plate, right? So if I come in here and add as a child, Shift Control A, and I type in QuestAdvanceTrigger. Okay. Take note that the icon's not there. We're going to have to reload the project for the little icon to show up. So we'll do that in a second. But if I want this pressure plate to trigger this, and let's go ahead and configure this QuestAdvanced node so that it actually does something. Let's quick load. Let's say that this is going to just give us short quest. Okay. It's not going to give us a step or quest complete, right? We'll just leave those off. So all it's going to do is give us the quest. Then what we could do here is we could come to our pressure plate, and if you look under the node tab, we've used these signals maybe once before. I don't love them, but you can see that activated signals right here. So if we right click that, or what do we do? Double click that, then we can select what we want to connect it to. And if we come down to our QuestAdvanceTrigger, we can click this pick, and it'll let us actually choose one of our functions. So we've got Advanced Quest. So if I select the Advanced Quest script and say OK and hit connect, boom, boom, boom. There we go. So we've got this. And let's go ahead and in our Advanced Quest, you can see it got this little green arrow to indicate that it's been connected to by a signal from another node. I'm going to go ahead and just print here, make a little message so that we know that this happened. And we'll just say Advanced Quest. And then maybe we'll put the quest title. All right. So now that this is set up, let's go ahead and run this. And let's look at our quests. We don't have any quests, right? And then if we step on this button, we should have seen the output, advanced quest, short quest. And then now that quest should also be in our quest display. Yep, there we go. Okay, pretty cool. Works pretty easy. And likewise, if we were to duplicate this pressure plate, since it already, and let me drag these to the side so it looks a little bit nicer. Okay, so this, if we were to take this second pressure plate and come back to the inspector, off of node and just onto the expector. And if we were to set this maybe to quest step 1 complete, okay, and then let's run this again. Okay, so no quests. First trigger, short quest is added. Second trigger, short quest is added, and the first step is complete. And apparently we found a bug, because look, we don't have anything displaying there. So that's something we'll have to deal with. Okay, but we can see how this works. And in fact, if we come in here, I'm going to go ahead and delete the second pressure plate. Let's use long quest because it gives us a little bit more to work with. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to change this from short quest to long quest. And you can see it reset our step, right? Like we want it to. So we have a button that gives us the quest. And then I'm going to duplicate it, drag it over, duplicate it, drag it over. Okay, the second one I'm going to select and say that this completes step 1. The third one I'm going to select it and say it completes step 2. Okay, now let's try this little test again. So now we should get long quest. And now we have one step completed. It seems like I have a bug with the step being marked as completed. That's what the bug is. Okay. I wonder if what broke. But we can see that that's mostly working, right? That's so odd because this was working as of my last recording, so I'm not sure what I broke. Let's take a look at this and see if we can step through and figure out why we're not updating the steps. So let's go ahead and just come down to our file system and let's find that quest manager node real quick, which I guess it's under quest scripts, right? Global quest manager. Here we go. When we call update quests, it seems to be working. In fact, let's find, do we have a print? Yeah. I'm going to just go ahead and comment these out and then let's run the game. And then this way I can hit P to, right? Let's see, if I hit P, I should be able to print out the quests. Yeah, there we go. No quests. I'm going to just make this smaller so I don't have to drag it around. Okay. Okay, so let's test these buttons out. So I did that. I have advanced quest, long quest. If I hit P, you can see long quest is in there. Yeah, completed steps. Those are updating. So the bug must be somewhere within my inventory UI. Interesting. Okay. Let's go ahead and open that next. So let's see, that one is here under GUI, pause menu, quests. Well, let's just open the pause menu, I guess. Okay, let's take a look at this here. We've got a script on our quests that when visibility is changed, let's take a look at this when we run this. I'm going to go ahead and just hit these switches so we can see the steps. Okay, now you can see, let's see, step 1 and step 2. We have these in all caps, right? So find quest by title. We're doing 2 lower in here, so that seems good. And we should be instantiating a new one of these. Let's go to our quest item, right? And then we're going to call initialize. Let's just put a print in here. Save that. Our game should still be running. So let's see if that prints out. Yeah, I see initialize step item. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I need to be looking at the next piece of code, right? Not this. Not the quest item, but the step item itself. So on focus entered, we have this bind update quest details. Okay, in here, for step in queue.steps, let's check this. Save that. Go back over to the game. Iterating over steps. Yeah, got that. So the new step is going to equal one of those. If step is complete equals, or this step is complete equals false, then if the title is not found, I think the problem is right here. Let's go ahead and just print the quest save.title real quick and see what that looks like. Save that, go back. Now if I go here again, what do we got? Okay. Yeah, the title's good. Okay, so we know we've got a step, or we've got a quest. Step is complete. This is the problem here. That's weird. Let me go back and see if that fixes it. There we go. That works. I don't remember when we added that to lower, but so that's the fix to that issue there. We were converting this to lowercase, and that was working because I think in our test data in our quest manager, we were saving it as lowercase. Now what we could do is, in fact, maybe we want to keep that in there to lower, but I want to come over here and update quest. When we update the quest, let's see. I think what we should do is save the completed step dot to lowercase, just like that, and save it. And I'm going to go ahead and run the game again. And what this should do is, you know, when we save our quest data, the step name should get converted to all lowercase. Zip P. No, it didn't. It didn't seem to do that. If quest index is -1. Oh, it's because we have two ways. Two ways to do this. Let's do the completed step to lowercase right here. So we should just always convert these to lowercase. That'll help us resolve any issues with that in the future, right? So anytime we add a quest step, whether it's here or up here, we just want to make sure we convert it to a lowercase. If I run that again, this should fix it. So yeah, let me just run over these buttons real quick. I'm going to hit P, and you can see now that our steps are lowercase. And if I come up here to quests, there we go. Okay, cool. I'm going to go through and just clean up those prints and get ready for the next step. All right, I've reloaded my project so that my little Quest Advanced icons show up. So you can do that if you need to or want to, or they will the next time you relaunch the project. But one thing I mentioned is I don't really like linking the signals this way. And, you know, I don't know if developers of Godot Engine are listening. I just don't like it because it's kind of hidden. It does show the little signal over here, which is nice. And so maybe actually I'm just kind of being weird. But what I would like to do, I'm going to add this. You could, with what we're going to do here, you could still use this old method. But I'm going to go back into the QuestAdvanceTrigger script. And we're going to add something. And what I want to add to this QuestAdvanceTrigger is, let's add an export category. So I can make a little section for this here. What we're going to do is have a way to connect to a parent node's signal just by providing the name. So parent signal connection is the label I'm going to give this. And we'll make an export variable, which will just be called signal name and is a string. And by default, that'll just be an empty string. So here's what we're going to do. This will not break, like I said, what we did previously, because first we'll do a check. First, we'll say if signal name does not equal empty string. So we're only going to run this little piece of code if we have a signal name, but it's pretty simple. What I'd like to do, so for example, this pressure plate, when we look at it, we could connect it to the activated signal. I'd like to be able to just select the Quest Advanced node and over here, just type that in instead of going through all those dialogues, right? Okay. And before we can connect to that signal, we also need to make sure it's a valid signal, otherwise we'll get an error. So in here, if the signal name does not equal a blank string, then we'll check if get parent, we'll check the parent node. And then there is actually a function called has signal. Okay, and we just pass in the signal name, a string, and that'll return true or false. So if it does have the signal, then we know we can connect to it. So we'll say get parent. And then instead of just typing the signal name and then .connect, we'll use the direct connect function here, which allows you to put the string name of a signal and then include the callable or anything like that, right? So the signal name that we'll use is obviously signal name. And then the callable, the thing that we want to call is just advanced quest. Just like that. Okay. So I'm going to save this. So then what I could do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to clear these connections, disconnect. And I'll do it on this one as well. Disconnect. And I'm going to do it to all three because I don't like it. Okay, so then I can just come here and just say and just double check, double check your script. Activated. That's the name I want. I can go ahead and copy that. And then just come into signal name and paste it. Activated. It's funny that it's showing null right there. Probably because I added that after the fact. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and save it. And in fact, just for fun, let's put a spelling error on the last one so that the last trigger won't work. So there's a flaw in it, right? I mean, obviously you have to get it just right, but I still got the quest. I still completed a step. And then that one didn't work. Okay. But now you can see that for some cases, this is going to be a preferable way for some of you. So if you like this methodology of connecting to a signal, then by all means, go ahead and use it. Okay. But if you prefer to use Godot's way of doing it, then you can do that too. Okay. All right. Now, one last thing I want to do with our new QuestAdvanceTrigger node is I want to add a visual indicator to the level. So like we've done in the past, right? Like with our dialog system, we give the NPC the little dialogue thing, or even with the pathfinding. I want there to be a visual indicator, on the map when we're editing a level to cue me into, oh, hey, I've got a quest advance here. So this is pretty simple. We're just going to add a sprite 2D to this node. All right. And we can come into our file system and use this QuestAdvancePNG. I'm just going to drag it up and over to the side. Now, the reason I'm going to drag it up and over to the side is because the next node that we'll make will be the quest activated switch, right? Which means that it's going to be possible that maybe a single node could have both an advanced trigger as well as one of these activated switches. And so I want it to be able to display both icons like this side by side. So in order to make that happen on this QuestAdvanceTrigger node, we're going to display the checkbox on the right. Okay, and really that's all we need to do with that. Like if I save and come back to the scene, you'll see, okay, these have that little trigger on there, but obviously we don't want that to show in the game. So just real quick, let's go back over to the scene and go over here. And we can just add one additional line of code into our ready function. And I'm just going to click and drag sprite 2D, and then we can type dot queue_free. And then when we run the game, it'll just get rid of that sprite. And there we go. Okay. So there you have it. We've gone ahead and built this real simple quest thing. And let's just test it in one additional way. Let's go back. We've got this dialogue. We've got our guy Nero down here, NPC 2. And he's got a question for us. If you recall in the dialogue interaction, we have this dialogue choice. And he says, hey, will you help me retrieve my magical flute from the dark dungeon? And we can tell him yes or no, right? And I'd like to be able to tie into the dialogue system to advance this quest. And the place where we need to do it is within the dialog branches. Like, if you pick the first branch, that's where you say you can count on it. That's us saying, yeah, we'll take the quest. So once that happens, we should give the player the quest, right? So let's go ahead and add a quest trigger. I'm going to do Shift-Control-A. Okay, add a QuestAdvanceTrigger. Now the problem is the QuestAdvanceTrigger on this dialog system, I don't have a signal to connect it to just yet. Okay, let's go ahead and configure it though. Let's give it the quest, because obviously it's the recover lost flute quest, and we won't have any completed steps. We're just going to give it to the player. So that's all we need to do for that. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. I want to be able to go into our dialog system, and in the simplest way possible, I want to enable a signal so that we know when a choice is selected, right? So let's begin by opening our DialogBranch script. And I'm simply going to come up to the top here and add a new signal to our dialog branch, and we'll call it selected. Pretty simple, straightforward, right? I'm going to go ahead and save that. Then when I come back here and I look at my Quest Advance, I can type in selected as the signal I'm connecting to. This isn't going to work yet, of course, because that selected signal is never emitted currently. And in order to do that, what we need to do is open our dialog system script, which, see if I can find that. Should be under globals. Or no, dialog system. That's one of our GUI things, isn't it? There we go. Dialog system. And then if I open up scripts folder, dialog system, here we go. Okay, and this is a pretty hefty script, right? So where the heck are we going to do this? The script actually opened to the set dialog choice, which is, for whatever reason, it's the perfect place. Because what happens here is it shows us that we already have a thing, right, for this dialog branches. For each branch, we make a choice, and then when a choice is selected, we connect a signal, the dialog choice selected, and we bind the branch. Okay, the dialog branch, which, if you recall, that's the script we just added a selected signal to. Okay, right, that's a dialog branch. So if we come down here and look at the dialog choice selected, then what we're doing is we're hiding the choice options, and then we're showing the dialog that this branch contains. And so all we need to do in here actually is on this dialog branch, which is _d, see, we're passing that in. Then we just say dot selected dot emit. So now it should emit that signal only for the choice that is selected. So if this works, we should be able to run this and accept Nero's quest. Okay, so let's check it out here. Quests, no quests. Let's talk to Nero. Will you help me retrieve my magical flute? Blah, 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 blah. And I'll say you can count on it. And now when I check my quests, boom, there we go. Recover the lost magical flute. So we've kind of come and implemented all that we need to for this QuestAdvanceTrigger. The next step, of course, would be to make it so that when a quest advances, things change, right? Because if I come and talk to my dude here, he's still going to ask me the same question, and I do not want that. And obviously, we need to be able to do other things, like maybe the NPC goes away altogether. Maybe when we come to an area, a door is opened or closed because of a quest status, right? All of these things will be handled with the next node that we're going to create. We'll do that in our next tutorial. So if this has been beneficial to you, and if you continue to enjoy my content, I ask that you subscribe to my channel. As always, give me a thumbs up, comment below if you've got questions or if you can help. And for those of you who feel inclined, you can support me on Patreon. Links down in the description. And as always, we'll see you next time.